Hey there, welcome to Papercraftpanda. If you're watching this video, then you probably picked up my Coptic binding materials kit. It's available in my Etsy store, and everything in this kit is going to help you make the book that you see to your right. Okay, so let's review what's in the materials kit. First, you've got 22 sheets of Mohawk superfine bright white paper, 2 sheets of ivory finely linen cover stock, 2 sheets of book cloth, 2 book boards, 2 yards of waxed thread, 1 curved bookbinding needle, a punch template, and a glue stick. You're going to also need a 12-inch ruler, a pair of scissors, and a pencil, an awl or needle or nail and hammer, a bone folder or you can use your fingertips, heavy books to use as a book press, and as an optional you can have some liquid PVA glue. Elmer's glue would work fine, and if you do, you'll want to have a glue brush. I'm also going to recommend a few helpful extras. If you have a sanding block or snail, that'd be great. A damp towel to wipe your fingers just in case you get glue on them. Masking tape or painter's tape if you have some, and a cutting mat or similar surface. So first, let's start with folding signatures. Go ahead and grab your stack of paper. You're going to have the 2 linen sheets on top. Those are your end sheets. Let's go ahead and just set those aside for now. And then we're going to take the main stack of paper. There's 22 sheets here of Mohawk Superfine. We're going to count out 4 sheets. Those are going to be tipped onto your end sheets later. I'll show you how to do that. But for now, let's just set those aside. And then take the main stack. You should have 18 sheets left. And we're going to separate this into 6 stacks of 3 sheets each. So these sheets are going to become your signatures. While normally I might do 4 sheets per signature, this paper is a heavier 80-pound Mohawk Superfine, and I chose that so that it would be sturdy for you, especially if this is the first time that you're trying out this particular type of binding. Finish separating these into their individual stacks, and once you're all done, go ahead and gather them up, give them a good pat, and then set them aside. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to fold these. So the first way is just to fold down. We're going to be doing the fold down method. You can press in the center, use your fingers, go up and down, and if you have a bone folder, you can go over it once. Or you can do my preferred method, which is to fold over all at once, get the edges lined up, and then I use my thumb at the bottom and I press up. So let me show you my method one more time. Go ahead and fold it over, all of the papers at one time. Use your thumb on the bottom right corner, smooth up, and then use your bone folder if you have one. Now I'll go ahead and speed this up so it doesn't take as long in the video, but you can slow this down, stop the video, pause, go back until you have all of your signatures folded and ready to go. Once you're finished folding, you can gather the stack. You should have 6 signatures. Split the stack in half and fold one set the opposite direction, just like that. Now lay them on the table underneath a heavy book and let them press for at least 10 or 15 minutes. While we're letting them press, we will go ahead and tip on our end sheets. So we're going to grab the 4 individual white sheets of paper that we started with and the 2 ivory sheets as well. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is separate these into 2 individual stacks. Each stack will contain 2 of the white sheets and 1 of the ivory sheets. These 2 stacks, one will go at the beginning of the book and the other will go at the end of the book. And they're kind of like an intro. So they give the reader or the journalist something to look at before they enter the actual meat of the book. So to get started, we're just going to do some basic folding like we did before. Let's start with the ivory sheet. Go ahead and fold it over. The single sheet, smooth down to the right corner with your thumb and up. And if you have a bone folder, give it one more smooth for good measure. Then take the other 2 sheets, fold them over together at the same time, and just like you did with the other signatures, go ahead and align them, press at the bottom right corner, smooth up, and then smooth with a bone folder if you have it. Let's go ahead and set the first stack aside, and we'll repeat that entire process with the second stack. Alright, now that we finished our 2 stacks, we're going to go ahead and glue the ivory sheet to the white signature. You can use a liquid glue, like in my PVA pot here, or a glue stick. If you use liquid glue, a brush is really handy. And I'll show you first on the left set, and then I'll show you on the right set how to use a glue stick. So pick up the white signature, and we want to make about a 1/4 inch line along the signature edge with glue. Go ahead and get your brush wet, or your fingertip, whichever you're using, and you want to start at the center of the signature and just kind of work your way up, making this line of glue that's around, like I said, a 1/4 inch thick at most. About 3 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch is perfect. Now I'm just wiping off the bottom and then smoothing the glue down with my fingertip just to make sure that there's no air bubbles. And then I'm going to lay the signature down. And we're just going to connect the two spines of these sheets together just like this. Now when I press it with my fingers, I get a little bit of excess glue on the table, which is totally normal. Just make sure you have a rag ready so you can wipe it off. You don't want to accidentally get glue anywhere else on these end sheets. Now I give it one more good press with my fingertips, and then I'm going to set that aside because the liquid glue needs to set up and dry before we can work with it. So while that's going on, I'm going to go ahead and repeat the process using a glue stick. First, you're going to want to grab a scratch sheet of paper, lay it down, and using the tip of the glue stick, I'll zoom in here so you can see a little better, we are going to make just 1/8 to a 1/4 inch of a line going down the length of the spine of the white signature. And I usually go over about 2 or 3 times with a glue stick to make sure we get enough glue on there. And then I get rid of the scratch sheet of paper and I repeat the process I did before. If at all you get some slippage, just use your fingers to open up the white sheet and adjust it to wherever you need it to be. Just make sure you try doing that before the glue sets up. Now put those two aside and let them press for a little bit with the regular stack of signatures, and then we're going to move on to punching holes. After everything has pressed for about 10 minutes or so, go ahead and remove your heavy book, and you can see that I have added the ivory sheet stacks to this stack of papers as well. And I've also got my template here that says top head at the top, and it actually shows us where we're going to be punching these signatures for sewing. Straighten out your book. I've actually made a little B and an F on the front and back of the book in pencil so I can erase it later. And then I'm going to grab my pencil here and make a little arrow because that's the top or the head of the book, which is what the H stands for. And that needs to match up with the top head of our template. And grab the first signature, open up the white inner sheet just like this, line up the top or head of the template. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my awl and I'm going to just make a pin prick mark. So I'm not going to actually stab through the paper, I'm just going to make a pin prick where each of the areas are that I need to create a hole for, just like this. Once it's done, just set aside the template, grab your awl again, and then finish making the hole. You want it to poke through about a 1/4 of an inch, so you want about a 1/4 of an inch of the awl to be showing on the opposite side once it pokes through the paper. That usually gives us enough room for the needle and it's just perfect. Now turn it upside down and set it aside, so just like this, upside down, slide it away. And that's how we want to do every single one of these signatures to make sure that they stay in the exact same order. We're going to go ahead and line up the template and use our awl to make a pin prick. Now this is the thicker signature, it has 3 sheets in it, and so you're going to want to press a little harder to make the pin prick, then set aside the template, and once again push the awl through about a 1/4 of an inch. There we go. Once that's done, we turn it upside down and lay it on top of the last signature. So let's go ahead and repeat this process with all of the signatures. If you need to, feel free to stop the video so that you can catch up with where I'm at, or back it up if you want to see how it's done again. All right, now that we're done punching the holes in the signatures, we're going to go ahead and punch holes in your boards. Go ahead and get the 2 Davy boards that you have. It should look like this. You're also going to want to have an awl, your punch template, and a pencil. Anything else you don't need right now, so let's just set it aside. Now the first thing that you need to do is mark up your boards, and this is going to help you keep things organized. So I have the boards one on top of the other, and I know that the spine is going to be on the left side, so I'm writing the word spine on the front, just like that. And then I have to flip the book over like this. Did you see how I had to flip it? And write spine on the other side. So now when I hold it up, I can show you spine here and right there. So these are both along the spine. And then I want this to be the front board. So I'm going to lay it down, write a big F on it for front, and then I'm going to make an arrow pointing up at the F. That's going to remind me that the head of the book is up at the F. Now I'm going to turn this over and repeat on the back, but I'm going to use a B for back and then draw the arrow again, just like that. Now we're going to flip this over, and I just want to write the word top. This again reminds you that that's the top of the book, and we need it on both sides because we're going to use that when we start covering them later. So now that we've written on it, let's go ahead and get our template. It says top head at the top, and we're going to do kind of like what we did with the signatures, except this time you'll notice that the template is slightly shorter than the book. So get it centered so there's about 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeters at the top and bottom, just like this. And then I'm using a piece of masking tape to hold it in place. And I've got it lined up with the edge of the spine, and I'm going to just take the bone folder and poke a hole, not a deep hole, but enough to mark the board, right through these little holes on the template. Now here's where things get a little tricky. That's the front. When we do the back, we have to handle it slightly differently. So before taking off the template, I make sure the holes are visible. Then I'm going to turn the book over just like this. The 2 boards, I mean, it's not a book yet. And then you also have to invert the template like this, which is easy because you've already poked holes through it, so you know exactly where the holes go. So I line it up 3 millimeters on the top and bottom, reuse the tape, and then I'm just going to take the folder, not a folder, I said that earlier too. I'm going to take the awl and just poke through these holes so we get something visible on the board itself. There. Now that we're done, we can set aside the template. You can see the holes, which is great. And now we're going to take the awl and we're going to pierce through the board from the outside toward the inside. So once again, I'm just redefining these holes. And if you don't have an awl, this is a good spot to use a nail and a hammer. So you would just set the nail in and use the hammer to punch it down. But if you do have an awl like I do, you want to push the awl through until there's about 1/4 of an inch exposed. So let me show you what that looks like here. Up close, you can see about 1/4 of an inch through. And with a tapered awl, the further you go, the wider the hole because it is tapered. So try to keep it at about 1/4 of an inch. You don't want it any wider than that. All right, first board is done. We're going to set that aside. And now we're just going to repeat that with the back board. But remember, we want to punch from the outside of the board toward the inside. And we do that because as you're punching these holes, the awl or the needle is making kind of a bump on the back, and that's because this is really high quality Davy board. So if you don't like those bumps, and I don't, they can mess with the paper, I like to sand them. So this step is optional. If you have some sanding paper, or like I do, I have a sanding snail. That's what it's called, I guess because it looks like a snail. And I'm using 220 grit sandpaper on my snail. I'm just going to get a piece of scratch paper and I'm going to sand lightly. You don't have to push hard. This board is really quality, so it'll sand easily. But you do want to make sure that you kind of get those ridges off. Get it as flat as you can. It may not be perfect, and that's okay. Wipe off the excess dust. And then I noticed the bottom one was still kind of bumpy, so I went at that again. And then once I get that done, I'm shaking the whole desk, sorry. All right, so a couple more swoops up, and then let me show you what that looks like. Close up, you can see those big ridges are gone. We're pretty flat now, and we're going to repeat that process with the backboard. All right, once all of your sanding efforts are complete, we're going to go ahead and move to covering these boards. For this process, you're going to need the 2 boards that you just finished punching and sanding, and then the 2 sheets of dual book cloth that came with your kit. Notice the book cloth does have a grain direction, and that's the direction that it's going. And now what we're going to do is we're basically going to glue this board down to the book cloth, and it has to go face, so I consider this the face, down. So where all of those markings are that we made, they're going to disappear, so we're just going to rewrite them. So I want top, and then I want an arrow reminding me of which direction is up. It gets lost once it's covered, believe me. And then just an F to show that this is the front board. It's not necessarily the front of the front board, but it's the front board. Hope that makes sense. All right, so let's go ahead and get our glue. You can use a glue stick for this. You'll just want to make sure you're using extra glue from your glue stick, and follow my lead. So start on the face in the center and begin brushing the glue from the center out toward the edges. And it's okay to use a lot of liquid glue here because the board itself is going to absorb some of the water from the glue, and it's actually going to start to set. So you want to get enough glue on that you have a layer that can absorb into the board and then also into the paper lining of your book cloth. So just keep going like this, and if you're using a glue stick, again, just do it the same way. Start at the center and work out toward the edges. Now I've used a bristle brush for this and also a foam brush. They both work great. The benefit of a foam brush is that the glue will stay in the tip of the brush, and so you can sort of plant a little extra glue on those edges that start to dry without making it too thick. I think that's kind of nice. Now once the glue is in place, turn the board over and lay it down onto the book cloth, getting it roughly centered so that you've got about the same amount of book cloth around each edge. Don't worry if it's not completely perfect. That's okay, because we're going to cover it up anyway, you'll see. Then use your fingers or a bone folder like I'm doing to smooth the air bubbles out. I like to give it a good press, then turn it over, and use my hand and my fingers to just look for any extra bubbles. Then use a bone folder very lightly, and your fingertips work even better. If you have a folder though, go super light, just to get out any extra air bubbles. You don't want to damage the cloth. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and put it under weight for about 5 minutes. And once the 5 minutes has completed, we're going to grab our ruler and pencil and just mark up these corners. So let me zoom in and I'm going to show you how to do this. All right, so you're going to take your ruler, line it up with the corner of the board and the corner of the book cloth, and then line up one of the marks. I put the 60mm mark at the corner of the board, and then go 5mm out and make a mark on the paper, just like that. Repeat that with each of the corners. You want it to look about like this. Then use your scissor to just clip away those outside corners. I just hover right over the dot and cut down. And when you're done, you're ready to move on to the next step. So before we do anything else, we're going to go ahead and just repunch these holes. So I'm poking through the cloth now because I don't want to lose the position of those holes. So now on the outside in, I poke back down to push the cloth into the hole. and then I'm ready to do some gluing. So now we're going to start with the top and the bottom, then we'll do each of the 4 edges. So go ahead and get your brush, get some glue on your brush, or if you're using the glue stick, follow this as well. Go ahead and add the glue to the edge, about the same that you did with the back of the book. You don't need as much glue, but you do want to have enough that some can soak into the board and some can soak into the cloth. Now I stand it up, press down nice and tight on the edge, fold and press. Using my thumb, I press in from out to get those air bubbles flattened. And then I'm going to use a bone folder. You can use your fingertips for this as well. But a bone folder it has just enough weight to push the glue. See how it pushed some of it out? I use my towel, clean it off. That gets it nice and tight against the board. So now from the center down, I'm going to just swipe it one more time. Oops, got some of my dog hair in the way. Okay, so we're going to just flatten that with the edge of the folder. Smooth it one more time just to find any extra glue. And then we will flip the board around, and we will glue the bottom edge. So we're going to repeat this process. I got a little too much on there this time. I can tell because it's pooling right there. So I'm just going to use my finger to get some of it out. And that's okay, we're going to have some seepage, but that's all right. Now we'll just repeat what we did before. We press that edge, fold over, down, and press. I just got to make sure there's no glue on the surface so I don't accidentally set my cover down on some glue. And you can see with my thumb, I'm already pushing some of that extra glue out. So I'm just careful not to get any of it from my thumb onto the cloth. Now using a folder, I'm just going to press it and deal with some of this excess. And I like to push some of that excess up into the corner, just because a lot of it doesn't make it out to the corner, so it's pretty helpful when we go to turn corners. Now we'll do the spine edge. First, adding some glue, and then I'm careful just to put a little bit in that corner. And then I'm going to show you 2 different ways to fold corners. The first way is pretty easy. I actually learned this from a professor. Just use your fingers to kind of push the outside in a little bit, and then use your thumbnail to press it down to the board. Now, I have very short thumbnails because I decided to trim my nails before the video, but hopefully you have enough nail that you can press it in and just smooth up. So it's, hello, camera, thank you. So we're going to push in, nail, and then just smooth it up. And from here on, it's just the same process. Tighten it around the edge. I'm just pushing those in a little bit more, wiping off my fingers. And then down and smooth. Now, if you have your own way of doing corners, go ahead and do it your way. Once we get this press, so I'm just pushing with my fingertips to get the air out, and then I'm going to use my bone folder to go from the center up and the center down. There's some seepage there, no big deal. And then I just flatten that corner down and get any excess out with my fingertip. Okay, so here's what those corners look like. Ta-da! So nice. So that was a great tip from my professor. It's very fast, but if that was kind of tough to catch too, let's just go ahead and show you another way to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and glue up the foredge here. Just the same way we did before, putting a little glue in that corner. Always start at the center and work your way out to the edges. And then once we get the glue layer, I'm just going to use my bone folder. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit and fix the lighting so you can see this better. There we go. using your bone folder, press in from the outside and down, and then boop, that's the swoop up. And then use your bone folder to flatten any edges that might be sticking up. So it's easier to see those edges if I do it this way. So from the outside, I'm going to push in and flatten it. Swoop. You can see that little edge sticking up there. I'm going to use the folder to push that edge down nice and tight into the board. Once that's finished, we can just stand it up, fold it down, and press. Okay, so let's repeat the whole process with the backboard. After marking those corners, let's go ahead and trim away the edges. Again, they don't have to be perfect. Do your best. And then once you get them trimmed away, we're going to go ahead and mark the holes again. So go ahead and make sure that you are pressing hard enough to get through the cloth. And then turn it over, and you can usually see the holes and then just reinforce them by going from the outside back in. If you can't see them, just run your finger over the cloth until you can feel the bump, or make the hole a little bit bigger so you can see it easier. Once you get that done, you'll just continue on. Fold over the top and bottom edges first, and then the spine and foredge next. Once you're finished with these boards, go ahead and place them under weight for about 5 minutes, and then we'll start gluing end papers. So the end papers are these 2 decorative sheets that you chose that were included in your kit. You have your top, you understand kind of what the top of the book is, and so you can flip this sheet around and figure out where do you want it. I'm using the whale and turtle one, and I kind of like this direction the most. So I am going to flip this over, and I'm going to use my foam brush and PVA glue to add glue to the back. And you're going to do this the same way that you did this on the board. The only difference is that this paper is a lot thinner, And so as it absorbs water, it's going to be curling up on you. It's going to start curling up on the edges. You can kind of see it doing it to me already. So take your time, but also try to move quickly. You don't want it to curl up too much, otherwise it just becomes a complete pain. So once I get down around my fingers like this, I move one to the middle, just using the edge of my fingertip to hold it in place. And while I sped this up, I'm actually going pretty slowly because I don't want the decorative paper to land in any of that excess glue that was on the scrap paper. Now the key here is to get it down on the board as quickly as you can. So I centered it, laid it down, and now I'm just pressing with my fingertips. The paper, the longer you have it off the board, the more it will expand. And so you want about 1/8 of an inch edge around the entire end sheet. If you hold the paper with glue on it for too long, it's going to eat up that excess edge and you just won't really have a border. That's okay, because actually some people really like it that way. I do like to have a little border around the paper if possible, so it's something to keep in mind. Now once you get it on there, go ahead and press it under weight for about 5 or 10 minutes while you work on the other board. So once again, we've got our markings here so we know which side is up. I'm going to go ahead and place the paper on the board this way, and I'm using this as scrap paper because you can see there's like a little UPC code in the bottom corner of this. Since I'm doing this for demonstration, that's okay with me, but some of these papers, you have to be careful because they do have the sales marks on them, so try not to get stuck using that part if you can help it. Now I'm demonstrating how to use a glue stick on this step. A lot of times for newer students, I recommend the glue stick for this. The paper is still going to curl a little bit because glue sticks still have water in them, and so it's still going to happen, but you have a lot more room to kind of take your time when it comes to this. The trick here is you do need to get the paper in exactly the right position before you press it, because liquid PVA will let you move the paper around a little bit, but the glue stick generally will not. So you don't get a whole lot of wiggle room once it's down. Oh wow, and then of course it kind of buckles on me here, but there we go. Let's get it pressed into place. The other good thing about a glue stick is the expansion is extremely minimal. So if you're not feeling confident, go ahead and just use a glue stick if you have one on hand. Otherwise, you might want to just dive in and do your best. We all have the first time that we do this, and so even if it ends up a little crooked or your frame is eaten up a little bit, that's okay. It's all part of the learning experience. So I'm going to go ahead and press this one. The other is ready to go. And so now I just want to reinforce those holes again, right? So we're going back through it so that we can see the holes on the end paper. And we do want to do this within about 5 minutes of pressing because the glue will actually soak into the holes. And so this helps us push the glue out of the way and get the hole exposed again so that we can run our needle through. And that is something I like to do with these. I do like to run my awl back through it just a little bit, or take the actual needle like this that you're going to use and just run the needle through the holes, because when you're actually sewing, and we'll go into that next, you don't want the needle to get stuck. You want it to be able to move through this pretty easily. So now that I know that it can get through those holes easily, I'm feeling really good about it and I can set it aside. Before I set it aside, I thought, you know what, I'm going to show you how to do this. So this is we've covered everything now. So for me, I know this is the front top of the board, and that's going to help me when I put the entire book together later. So I do suggest doing this. You don't want to accidentally get these mixed up because the holes will be in the wrong places on the boards compared to the signatures. So it's always important to keep the top, and the bottom. So now that we're done with that, I'm going to just press from the inside back out again. Again, this helps us with the glue, and because I have such a pattern, I couldn't really see the hole, so I just used my fingertip to find the rough spot, and now I'm just reinforcing with the awl. Here we go. Let's test our needle. Works good. Good, okay. All right, so that one is also very good. Now let's go ahead and put a piece of tape on this so we know which side is up. All right, so I've got my front and back boards finished. And if I put them together like this, the holes are all lined up equally. It's perfect and ready for us to sew. So let's just jump right into it. Okay, so for sewing, you want your curved needle, your finished boards and your thread, and of course your signatures. Unwind your thread entirely, just like I've done here, then flatten one end of the thread so that it's easier to feed into the curved needle head, just like that. Then pull the thread out and kind of stab a bit of the thread with the edge of your needle so that it's right in the middle of the thread. Then work it down to the bottom of the needle like so. And once you get close enough and you've pulled it tight like that, just fold the thread over the bottom of the needle and that will help hold it in place. Now to get ready for sewing, I took the stickers off, but essentially that's the top of the book there. I'm going to take the top board and all of the signatures except the last and fold them away from me. So on the right side we have the tail of the book, on the left side we have the head. And now we're going to feed the needle in through the signature's last hole, just like this, and pull that thread through. This is how we start the process of securing the signature to the book. This is probably one of the harder processes, so feel free to stop and go back if you struggle to kind of keep up. Leave about 2 to 3 inches of tail, because as you continue, it's going to try to pull the tail through some more, so you just want to keep your eye on it. Now let's feed the needle through the back of the board, like this, forward. All right. So I'm just holding the signature with my other hand while I feed the needle with my right hand. And I'm going to pull it through the thread. But see how those two are parallel to one another now? I don't want that, so I'm actually going to feed the needle through that piece of thread. And you can see how the tail keeps trying to pull through. Make sure you catch it like I did, because I can't tell you how many times it's actually pulled through on me and I have to do it all over again. So now that we've got it, I'm just moving the spine of the signature toward the edge spine of the book or the board, and then I'm just going to give it a little tighten. It's not going to be perfect though at this point especially, but I just want to be able to see where the two threads are next to each other there on the bottom right there. So I can take my needle and feed it through behind the thread and then pull it like this. That's going to help me create a knot that will prevent the thread from going back through the signature. So now I'm going to feed the needle into the signature, same hole, but because I created a knot on the outside, it's not going to let that thread pop into the signature. It's actually going to hold it in place, which is great. And now you've got an opportunity to position your signature on the board where you want it. I like to have the same amount of space at the top and the bottom, and then I try to make sure that the signature is as close to the foredge or the spine edge as possible. So now that I've got it where I want it, essentially, I'm just going to tie one single knot with these two pieces of thread. And I want the short end to pull toward my right hand so that it pulls off the book like this. There, see how a little tail hangs off the book? Now you're going to take the needle and feed it into the next hole inside the signature, right here and outside. Now the signature is still going to be a little loose. You still have some wiggle room to be able to get it where you want it to sit. So take an opportunity to just continue to straighten and position that signature where you want it. And then once you get the thread through, give it a nice tug on both ends like this, and that should tighten that first hole to the board pretty well. Now we are going to go to the back of the board, again, toward the front, just like this. And now when I have to lift that signature up, it loosens it again. That's okay. As you get each hole secured, the signature is going to move around a lot less. So now we're just going to pull this tight. And then once again, we're going to feed the needle behind the thread like so. And I know my hand is a little bit in the way, but I'm going to move it out of the way there. See, it just loops through that thread behind it, and then we've got a little knot. And now we're going to feed the needle back through the same hole like this. And instead of making a knot, we're just going to go into the next hole up. and we're going to repeat this process. Now when I pull this thread tight, it's going to tighten the one that I just finished to the board. So as we move up each step, we are further reinforcing the tightness of the previous holes to the board. All right, once again, lining it up with the edge as best we can. And it's getting easier now to line that up. Again, we're going to feed the needle behind the thread that's wrapped around the board. There we go. And now if I pull up and toward the paper like that, it creates a nice little knot holding it to the board. And then once again, we're going to go back into the same hole. Once inside, pull all the thread through. It may get stuck on your paper, that's okay, just take your time. Give it a small tug. It's going to tighten the one before it, and now we're going to actually come out of the hole at the head of the book, or the top of the book basically. Okay, so once again, we're going to go from the back of the board forward. This time it's a little easier. I can push it through and then twist the needle so that it comes out the top. Like this. There we go. And I had to kind of pull it because the paper is pretty stiff now and it didn't want to let it come through as easily, so it's okay, just take your time. Pull it through, feed it behind the thread so that you're making a knot. And then I like to give this one a good forward tug so that, let me just rearrange it here, get everything settled. Now I pulled it so it's nice and tight. But instead of going back through the hole, we're going to loop behind one more time, like so, to create a braided look. And then I'm going to pull it up and toward the paper, grab the next signature, open it up, and then we're going to go into the head hole of the second signature, or the top hole essentially. I like to feed the thread all the way through, then take our needle, go into the next hole and out. And as I'm pulling this thread through toward the end, I get it nice and lined up. I line up that signature with the one below it, especially at the head of the book. And then I give it a tug so that it's nice and tight. Then you're going to loop behind the thread below it, between the bottom signature and the board. And you're going to pull it up like that, up and to the right to create the braided look. And then you're going to feed it back into that hole again. Once I pulled it through, it loosened the one next to it, and that's okay, that's going to happen. So as I pull, I'm going to get the thread through here like so, and then I'm going to give a little tension to lock that down. You don't want to put too much tension on it because then your book won't want to open up easily. But if you don't have enough tension, the book is just going to be really loose and kind of fall apart. So it takes a while to learn how much tension you should use when you make these books. So don't worry if you get it a little too tight the first time. That's okay. Just keep looking at it and practicing as you go. So we looped behind again between the bottom signature and the board, and we're feeding the needle back into the signature. Coming out the tail hole here. And then I'm just going to press it down, give it one more tug here, and then I'm going to swoop behind the thread again to make that nice braided look. And then we're going to add the next signature just like this, and we're going to go into the tail hole of that signature. So now we're on signature number 3. So this is going pretty quickly, which is great. And we're just going to repeat this process. We're moving up one signature at a time though. So we pull it through, and then I'm going to go out the second hole up, just like we've done before. But this time You're going to arrange the signature so it's about as straight as possible, just like I did previously. Give it a little tug to tighten the tail hole. Let me get it situated correctly here. Okay. I'm going to give it a little tug to tighten it. Now swing the needle behind the thread that sits between the first and second signatures. See that? That's between the first and second signatures now. Pull through, make that nice little braid, and then you're going to go back into the same hole again. You can see that the thread is a little loose next door, so I'm just going to give it a little tug to tighten it up. Oh, my paper, it gets stuck all the time, so there we go. Give it a little tighten there, not too much. Okay. And you can see that I could still move the thread with my thumb, so that's how I tell, did I get it too tight, etc. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. I know I've still got it zoomed in here, but I did that on purpose so that you can really see again. I'm going behind the thread that sits between the bottom two signatures from the one you're at. So if you're on 3, you go between 1 and 2. If you're on 4, you go between 2 and 3. So I hope that that makes sense, but you can continue to watch me do it here. Okay, let's add the 4th signature. And like usual, we're just going to go into the signature from the hole at the top here. And make sure you use your finger to press down as you pull the needle through. You don't want the paper to tear, and at this point it could. That's one of the reasons why I chose a thicker paper for this project, just so that you have a little more wiggle room if it's your first time making a Coptic binding. So okay, I've got the 4th signature where I want it, and then I'm going to give a tug to tighten up that top hole there. And now I'm just looking to make sure, okay, where's my signature? We're going between 2 and 3 now. See that? And as you work your way up the book, you're actually creating this really pretty braided look when you're doing this. I just want to show you that little braid and how nice that's starting to look already. And then of course we'll go back in the same hole and we'll work over to the next spot. If you have any issues, feel free to stop the video or back up so that you can kind of catch up with where I'm at. Okay, now that we've finished the 5th signature, we're going to have to attach the 6th and final signature to the backboard, and this is where things get a little tricky. But again, it's like we're doing the first one in reverse, if that makes sense. So let's take the needle and run it through the back of the board first, starting at the head here. And I'm getting very low on thread, which is how I realized you guys would need way more than what I started with, so I gave you extra so this does not happen to you. But essentially you want to kind of sandwich the final signature and the board together, and I just put a little weight to kind of hold that where it's at just for a minute. I just need it for a second. So I kind of get the board where I want it, and then again I have to loop behind the thread that's connecting the board. So nothing to do with the signature yet, just the thread connecting the board. Then I remove the little weight and kind of lower the board down, and I pull to attach the thread and the board together. Now I'm going to just get it tight here. I'm going to take my needle, and let me pull this up so you can see it. The needle now needs to go behind the previous 2 signatures that are already attached. So it's going to go behind the thread attaching signatures 4 and 5 together. Give it a good pull, create your braid, and then you're going to actually run the needle into the top hole of the last signature, just like this. Now it's going to be loose and a little all over the place. That's okay. It's totally fine. You're going to lock it down as we go. So I'm pulling the thread through here, tightening it down like so, and then I'm actually going to take the needle once I get it set, and I'm going to feed it out of the second hole right here. And I'm going to make sure that once I pull the needle out, it goes behind the board like this. So I want the board to come up and over and sit down. I kind of use my fingers to get things straightened out again. Give it a tug, but not too hard or you'll rip the paper. Now lift the board again, feed it through the back. You might kick the signature around, it's okay. Just put the signature back where it belongs. So now I fed the thread through, and I'm getting everything kind of straightened out here. And then I'm going to run the needle once again behind the thread connecting the board, not the signature, just the board right now. That way we can make a knot attaching it to the board, like so. Then we're going to run the needle between signatures 4 and 5. Sorry, this went a little off camera there. There we go. So it's between 4 and 5. I'm going to pull it through to make the little braid, and then I'm going to feed that needle into the final signature. There we go. So now it's pretty well attached, so I need to open the cover and the signature at the same time. Give a little tug like we normally do. And now at this point I need to attach some additional thread. So I'm just creating a weaver's knot to do this, and I do have a video on my channel showing you how to create a weaver's knot if you ever want to get here. But I also included more thread with your book kit than I actually used when I was making the demonstration video. So you shouldn't have to worry about this, but if you do, there's an informative video to help you kind of attach a new piece of thread and move forward. Now I'd love to tell you that this solved all of my problems, but my new bit of thread was still too short for comfortable sewing. So you'll see me get a little creative as the thread begins to kind of run out again toward the end, but I'm still trying to move as quickly as I can because we're all on a time clock, I know. All right, so just rethreading the needle here with the new piece of thread, which I'm realizing as I do this is too short, but let's just keep going. So we're going out the third hole. There we go. There we go. And I'm just kind of straightening things out. Now I'm attaching it to the board again with the little knot. And sorry, I went a little off camera there, but there you go. Now you can see it. Make the braid pattern and then feed it into, let's just get this straightened out a little bit. There we go. That helps you see where the hole is at too. So sometimes you'll see me stop and just straighten things out so I can find the hole again. Okay, so for the last hole, we're going to proceed the same way. I don't know if you caught it there, but when I pulled the thread, I actually tore my paper a little bit. So I had to stop everything I was doing, fix the paper, which was no easy task, and then continue forward. And here, because my thread is too short, I've actually got to put the needle in first, then thread the needle and pull the thread through. So it's definitely tough when you don't have enough thread. But at this point, I don't usually like to attach thread at the end of a book. I like to attach it in the center where you saw me do the weaver's knot. So at this point, I was thinking, okay, suck it up, Misty. You're just going to have to show them what to do if their thread is ever too short. So first, I'll just push the needle behind the book thread, and then I actually have to thread it again. And then I can pull it like so. Create my little knot, and then from here I kind of have to repeat the process. I'm going to go ahead and put the needle behind the signatures like so, and then thread it the way I've been doing previously. And then now I will feed the needle into the final signature, which is just our end sheets, and then we're going to go ahead and pull it into the signature just like this. And once you're inside that signature, go ahead and open it up, nice and careful, and you just tie off your last dot. So as a last step, you're going to go ahead and tie this off the way you did the first one. Use your scissors to go ahead and clip away those little extra bits, and then you're done. So now let's take a look at your book. Coptics are super cool. They're going to have beautiful exposed spine with stitching, and then they do lay open flat, which makes it easier to write. The Mohawk Superfine paper works great with ink, just not marker or watercolors. Thank you so much for purchasing this kit and for trying out these materials. I really hope that you enjoyed making this book. I hope that my instructions were clear. I would love to hear your feedback. Please feel free to give me an email at hello@papercraftpanda.com and let me know if you have any additional questions or if there's anything else you would like to know about the Coptic binding method. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you in the next video.